Welcome back, boys and girls. This time we have another stunner from the Eastern Daily Press, the EDP. Yes, this wonderful newspaper decided to actually ask Great Yarmouth Council about their accidents over the last 5 years. Sounded boring to start with until I read the article, and then I started laughing out loud. What is it? Wait and see after the intro. It's because I'm a Londoner that I love Norfolk so. So, boys and girls, today we're taking a little tram ride into Norwich because we're going to go and have a look at the River Wensum. But first, just listen to this from Digital Doris. This makes me laugh every time I hear it.
Welcome to this service for Norwich. We will be calling at Norwich. The next stop will be Norwich.
The Great Yarmouth Borough Council's accident book is some sort of secret if it took the EDP to put in a Freedom of Information request. But I'll read a bit out to you. People trapped in a lift and a dog biting staff members are among a litany of accidents recorded in the council's so-called blunder book in the last 5 years. Well, that's fair enough, I told you. But when it got to some of them, it really did make me laugh out loud. And I'll read them out to you. It is, of course, not funny to the people who suffered in the accidents, and I wish them no hurt at all. But no, it was the way it was reported. Because apparently in this accident book there is a column where it says what action the actual borough council has taken to make sure that these accidents don't happen again. Well, in January 2020, in the town hall, one member of staff burned their hand while trying to open a door, wait for it, carrying a tray of hot drinks. And this was the action that the council took. They provided a new tray, and wait for it, there must be a person standing there to open the door for the person carrying the drinks. Is it me? I kid you not, this is what happened. Now pin your ears back and listen to this one. Another incident recorded in August 2021 at the town hall saw the return of a member of staff who had worked from home for the previous 8 months, obviously due, I assume, to the pandemic. After a while, they started to complain of back pain that they were caused by the harder office chairs. Okay? What was the action? The action by the Borough Council was to see a pillow provided to support staff members' back pain. Is it me? Anyway, moving swiftly on, here we are on the beautiful River Wensum on an absolute gorgeous sunny day. We're going to go down and have a look at some of the architecture and, most important of all, some of the bridges, the wonderful bridges that cross the River Wensum. Enjoy the walk. As we wander along, you can reflect deeply on my ever-continuing search for the ridiculousness of what the British public get up to. The latest is this. Oh, you couldn't make this stuff up if you tried, could you? Here's the latest from Norfolk News. A survey has revealed that Suffolk is having more sex than Norfolk. Would you believe? A nationwide survey by Prospectus Global has revealed that Suffolk locals are having sex 14 times a month, whilst those in Norfolk are intimate slightly less at 13 times a fucking month. As a result of all this bollocks, Norfolk is named as the country's third most sexually active region, with second place going to its naughty neighbour Suffolk. Guess what was number one? The Cotswolds, would you believe? Now these surveys, they're not scientific, are they? The only way they can get their information is by asking people. And of course, All young men are going to tell the truth about how many times they have sex every month, aren't they? You go up to some young strapping man and say, "How often do you have sex, young man?" "Oh, I really do think I get up to 20 times a month, you know what I mean, pal?" Honestly. Does the interviewer then go on to say, "No, young man, I don't mean how many times you have sex with yourself. I mean how many times you have sex with another hot, warm human being." If you'd have watched my episode on Sheringham, you'd have heard me talk about all these things that people are sticking up their arseholes all the time. Now, does that count as part of their sex as well? If you're observant, like I am, you will notice across the reports from the country that people are having sex with animals. Yeah, animals, sheep, dogs, goats. There was even some report about a guy that was caught having sex with a wombat. Fuck me. Another one was caught shagging a mongoose. Quick joke for you on the same subject. 14 priests die in a massive road accident, and they all go up to the pearly gates where St. Peter's waiting for them. And he says to these priests, "You cannot come in if you are a paedophile." And 13 out of the 14 priests turned on their heels and walked away. And after a few steps, St. Peter called out, "Oi, take the deaf one with you." There's another joke about heaven later on in this video. Now this talk about accidents at work leads me nicely into the introduction to another period in my life. I was 18 years old and I became a London transport bus conductor. After a short training period, which I won't bore you with, they appoint you to a garage, or shed as it was known as, and they appointed me to the most notorious shed in London transport history, Dalston Garage. London Transport refused to acknowledge that the garage actually existed. It was so bad. But there I was, 18 years of age, bright sparkling new uniform, appointed to Dalston Garage. Now what comes next is 3 years of the most wonderful employment an 18-year-old can actually have. This was the late 60s, early 70s in central London. Let me tell you, one of the best, the absolute best places to be at that time. Most London transport conductors' jobs were pretty sedentary. You know, the buses used to meander through the suburbs and they had very little touch with the actual city itself. But not Dalston Garage. It had two of the most notorious routes in London, and that was the number 11 and the number 9. These two routes were in the thick of it all day long. Starting at Liverpool Street, you went to Fleet Street, Mansion House, the Strand, Trafalgar Square, Whitehall, Houses of Parliament, Victoria Station, Chelsea, Kings Road, Chelsea, and so on. They were packed all day long. The buses were supposed to be 3 minutes apart, but one short delay would cause overcrowding on these vehicles like you can't imagine. And that's why they wanted young conductors, fit and agile like trained monkeys leaping about. Within days, once they left you on your own, that sparkling new uniform had turned into a series of rags. You couldn't actually wear that machine the way that they wanted you to. No, we used to hang them off our belts like gunslingers. Now it's a two-handed job to work that Gibson ticket machine. Your left hand hit the release and your right hand turned the lever to the correct fare. Now, the problem was you wouldn't have survived. You needed one hand to hang on to the manic bus drivers that we had, so you learned very quickly to fire the ticket using your left hand only. Now we never wore that silly cash bag either, that great big heavy leather thing over your shoulder. No, you wouldn't have survived. You got to remember this was pre-decimalisation, so the money was pounds, shillings and pence, big old pennies and halfpennies and threepenny bits and sixpences. No, you carried the change in the pockets of your jacket That was the only way that you would survive the mountainous amounts of people that used to climb onto that bus. And you got rid of that change as fast as you collected it. If somebody gave you a 2-shilling piece for a fourpenny fare, you gave them the change in pennies. Could the public argue with you? Absolutely not. You was lord and master of your bus, and the general public knew it. We all turned into little Hitlers, dominating that scene with as much venom as Hitler himself. Now, a London Transport route master used to have provision for 5 standing passengers on the lower deck only. But you took this bus over or started your duty at Liverpool Street, and if that happened to be 8:30 in the morning, it wasn't unusual to approach the bus to see that the back end, the platform, was virtually sitting on the floor, because they were standing on the stairs and on the top deck, and everywhere else there would be 25 people standing. The reason was all these bowler hats and suited bums used to think that you was an idiot. In some cases, they were right. You would get a new recruit or somebody that was just not up to the domineering structure and actually fall foul of it and get in a terrible state. But not us old hands. No, we would climb on board and start shouting at them like you can't imagine. Now come on, you're all bloody adults. You know it's only 5. Now get off. You get off. You and you get off. And like naughty children, they would comply. With heads bowed, they would sheepishly climb down the stairs and back onto the pavement to wait for the next one. Absolutely hilarious. Even more fun when it was pouring down with rain or snow. One of the perks of the job at the time, being only 18, 19 and so on, was March and April. Now we used to call this nipple weather, and the reason is because all the young girls that worked in the city used to mistakenly think that when the sun come out it was warm, and of course it wasn't. It was still chilly. So it wasn't unusual to be taking a fare from a young girl who's only got a light top on and 2 gigantic erect nipples. Back to the accident at work then. On one bright early morning I said to my driver Kenny, I'm going to get us the rest of the day off by faking an accident. So at the appropriate time, when no one was looking, I chucked that Gibson ticket machine down the stairs. It made a hell of a racket, and then laid at the bottom moaning. And I told him to call the inspector because I'd hurt my wrist. They sent me to Charing Cross Hospital, and wait for this, they gave me 3 months off because they said I'd fucking broken it. And of course I hadn't. When I got home, I cut off the plaster cast with a hacksaw. We would spend every single day trying to avoid picking up people. Yes, you heard it. Avoid picking up people. That meant that your driver drove like a crazy man to catch the one up in front. And then you would stay just out of sight of the people waiting at the bus stops. We used to call it measuring off. He would do all the work and there'd be nobody on your bus. We could, of course, simply overtake the packed bus in front, the one that was struggling, and take all the pressure off him. Did we? Did we fuck? On a normal day, I would pay in at the end of the shift about a third what was normally taken on that route for that day, but nobody ever questioned it. Another activity at avoiding work at all costs was to sabotage the bus itself by some sort of mechanical defect, always caused by me, of course. The list was endless. Flat tyres, punctured radiators, the bell didn't work, all the lights had gone out in the cabin. All too easy. If you put a 6-penny piece in one of the light sockets, put the bulb back in and turn the switch on, it would fuse all the lights. A particular favourite of mine was to undo the 2 big screws that held the radiator grill on. It would fall off en route and you'd run over it. Can't travel onwards, no number plate. Looking back on it now, Kenny and me, he was only 22 at the time, we spent half our lives chatting up girls at Victoria or Chelsea or Kings Road while we waited for instructions or for some repair crew to come out. Was we alone in this willful destruction of London transport property? Of course not. All the other young crews were doing the same thing. It wasn't unusual to pass a bus with a bonnet up and smoke coming from it. 3 women die and they go to the pearly gates where St Peter is waiting for them. And he says to them, now there's only one rule in heaven which you've got to obey, and that is don't tread on a duck. And they all look a bit mysterious. Anyway, St. Peter lets them in, and there's ducks everywhere. Thousands and thousands of ducks. Anyway, it doesn't take long before one of the women treads on a duck, and St. Peter immediately appears alongside the ugliest man you have ever seen in your life. This guy is horrendous. Anyway, St. Peter chains the woman to this ugly man and says, you will now spend the rest of eternity chained to this man. And off he goes. And sure enough, the second woman, a little bit later, treads on a duck. And sure enough, here comes St. Peter with the second ugliest man you've ever seen in your life. And he chains her to her without a word and says, you will spend the rest of eternity chained to this man. So naturally enough, the third woman is very careful about where she puts her feet. She really does not intend to tread on a duck. And this she achieves for many months, very carefully avoiding treading on a duck. And one day, St. Peter arrives, completely unannounced, with the most handsome man you have ever seen. Long eyelashes, tall, muscular, brilliant looking guy. And he chains her to her. And she says, I can't believe me luck. I wonder what happened. And the bloke says, well, I don't know about you, but I trod on a fucking duck. There is a famous photograph from the back then, from those days. It was on the front page of the Daily Mirror. And what it shows is a horse guard holding a bus conductor with his bayonet to the bus conductor's throat. That was one of our bus conductors. He'd spent all day taunting this guy, calling him a wanker every time the bus stopped outside horse guards. And in the end, the horse guard lost it, dragged him off the bus and threatened him with a bayonet. Absolutely true. Now personally, I think the worst thing that London Transport ever did in the name of progress was get rid of the conductors. Because on a brighter note, we were advocates of the city, telling people where to go and talking about some of the landmarks and so on. Now I'm coming to the end of this video on the wonderful River Wensum, but I'll talk some more about London Transport in the next video, because when I was 21, I became a driver. I wouldn't want to be a driver today, of course. They got about 6 or 12 cameras looking at every move they make, and these machines are soulless with their mechanical voices telling you where they are. So I do hope you enjoyed this video and you had a bit of a giggle. I'll see you on the next one. So, I get an awful lot of things just walking up and down. See ya.